Hello and welcome to the podcast of FringeArtCulture.com. This podcast aims to enrich the community by focusing on local art and culture. We are your hosts. I'm Grant and this is Alison.
Hey, how you going?
And this week we have with us Peter Thompson. How you doing,
Hi.
Peter?
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Welcome to episode 7.
On this podcast, we'll be exploring in more depth the topics raised and artists featured on the blog during the month.
But we also want to hear from you. Hit us up on the comments or on our contact page. Let us know what you're up to. We want this to be a community built by the community for the community. We'll be chatting with artists, authors and musicians, sharing with you the best of what we can find in our local community, including author readings, flash interviews with musicians and sets from amateur comedians. And we'll be catching you up on what's been happening and what's coming up in the local area. All this on demand when it's convenient for you via the blog or your podcast provider of choice.
So this month, Peter, we actually went out into the community with one of your pieces called Eyes in a Blanket. Can you tell us a little bit about that and we can discuss a little bit about what the community said?
Yeah. Okay, so I was doing a series of twig collages, which is overlaying twigs and weaving them into paintings. And it wasn't the first one that I'd done. And each one has a different story. That particular story of that one was my dad had this beautiful phrase that he used to use with me. And in particular situations where he was doting on me. And he would say, "You have eyes like two burnt holes in a blanket."
You know, I'd never heard of that before. It was amazing.
I know. And I think it, you know what, I actually kind of think it came from something like Star Wars.
Even better.
I know, right? Anything that's from Star Wars is cool. And I think I started off with the idea that the blue in the painting was the blanket and that I had wrapped it around my face and just my eyes were peeking out. And then when I did the sketch and overlaid the sticks over it before I painted the underneath, I realised that it looked like something completely different than what I had originally envisaged. So I went on this journey of asking myself, what am I really painting? Is it what I originally intended? Or is my subconscious telling me I should be doing something else? And so I changed quite a few of the features of the painting and the eyes and the colours as I was going along, because I knew that what was being expressed from me was something different than what I originally intended.
Yeah, I really thought that the eyes, and a lot of the feedback we got said that the eyes really spoke to them and they got like it was they were seeing right into your soul and kind of, you know, there was that question there that was kind of begging to be answered. A lot of people didn't know what to make of the twigs actually, which I thought was interesting. And it took me, at the beginning, I must admit, I thought it was a little bit stalkerish, you know, like they're peering through something, you know, probably looking at something they shouldn't be and, you know, crossing that kind of, whether it be an emotional or cultural or whatever the barrier was, you know, just kind of trying to peek through to the other side. But I don't know, unfortunately, everyone we spoke to this last month didn't want to be recorded, so we don't have the recordings, but I do have a lot of what everyone said on Facebook. And, you know, it's interesting to hear what people say online because I think it's different when you're actually in front of a piece. So I'm not sure if everyone's aware, we went to a couple of places for this engagement piece. The first place we went to was the Logan Village Cultural and Music Festival. And so that, you know, if no one's been there before, it's basically set out at Logan Village on the green out there, and they have a bunch of different bands. I think previously they labelled it as a country music festival, but this year it wasn't labelled that way. Whether they're trying to get away from that image or not, I'm not sure. There was a few little market stalls around, about 2 or 3 different stages, some nice soulful music, you know, and some, you know, street van type food and stuff to enjoy. But we had the actual piece with us. We had one person who came up and engaged us just because we were holding it, which was really interesting. What did she say?
She seemed to think it was, trying to remember now. She thought the eyes were asking a bit of a question. She didn't pick up any cultural necessary meaning there. She just saw someone kind of peering out from behind something.
Yeah.
She didn't say that they were. Some people. I think we thought that some people might have said they were like the person was like repressed or something like that, but she didn't see any of that. She just saw the eyes kind of looking out and kind of that questioning sort of a look that you were portraying in it. So
Yeah.
Yeah. And then a lot of the other people, I don't know if it was because, I know we spoke about this briefly, because we had the actual piece, whether people were a little bit off put because it was, right in front of them and they thought, like art, I guess, has become very unapproachable, which is what we're trying to break down. And so to have that piece with us, they were like, whoa, and they just kind of shut down really quickly, which was really sad. But hopefully, if we can continue doing this, we can open people up and get them to be a little bit more receptive. But then when we took out the actual photograph, which is basically the same size as the piece, honestly, it was a full A4 page of
on glossy photo paper.
Yeah, we printed it really high quality. The feedback was a lot more receptive. People were able to say, "Oh yeah, I can see concern in her eyes." And I think one lady did say that she thought it was cultural. That it was is it called a hijab?
Yeah.
Hijab, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm horrible with those things, unfortunately. I always tend to say the wrong thing. So she did see the
that
cultural
would be more
element.
the burqa, because the burqa is where you just see the eyes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it was very interesting to get those two different responses.
I think having a look at some of the feedback on Facebook and on social media, I think people were kind of a little bit more circumspect, because you are very well aware that you're not just talking to someone, you're actually, everybody can see what you say. Yeah. And having made the mistake myself occasionally of commenting what I actually think on things online, particularly say on ABC kind of feeds, you find that the
what's that
engagement can be quite ferocious.
The comments is where discourse goes to die.
Yeah. Yeah. And everything else comes out to play.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's two sides to that coin. It's either you're really censored in what you write because of that whole, the trolls and everything that come out, or you just don't care and you just write whatever you feel like.
Yeah,
and I guess it
let them
depends
come.
Yeah, pretty much.
Bring it on.
Yeah, it's like comment, then turn off notifications, and then just like walk away.
I released that piece online actually when I first painted it. And some of the feedback then was that it looked like a ninja. Like it was really, it kind of looked fierce. And then there was the whole thing of the burqa came out, and that's why I think Naomi suggested it, or that we considered this for this kind of community engagement, because inadvertently that was the first time I'd ever thought of it. I had not seen that. I had not seen that in it, or the repression, or the fact that the twigs could be taken to be barbed wire. So it was really interesting that some people said to me that the twigs made it look more prickly than what the eyes suggested it should.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I changed the colour of the eyes because my eyes are brown. So I changed the colour of the eyes to green for that very reason, because most Arab women have brown eyes. And I deliberately wanted to take that immediate cliched recognition away from that piece.
Yep.
And I also changed the expression in her eyes, because the eyes for me are the window to the soul. They are the feature of that piece, and I wanted you to be more drawn to them than what was around them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I think I achieved that.
Yeah, I think you did.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't get as many of them as what there probably would have been if the eyes were brown.
Yeah.
I think that probably would have been.
I think people thought more deeply about it because they weren't.
Yeah. Isn't that
A
strange?
lot of people saying they were very beautiful eyes.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. I do like. I have a way with eyes. I like eyes.
Yeah, they were very soft. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
I really liked this point where someone made, it was actually a good friend of mine, Belinda Beckers, that she said that there was no leaves on them, which to her meant that there was nothing nurturing about them. You know, she was holding things in, and that was something that I didn't pick up when I looked at it. I really did. I wondered whether it was, you could take it where you're actually, the barrier itself was nature, and the barrenness of it was the barrier, rather than, the eyes being, as much as they were asking a question, the isolation or whatever that you could see, or the question, and then was sort of juxtaposed against the realm of nature itself.
Yeah.
And the narrative behind that.
Yeah. And I too, sort of flitted. I was asking myself the question, do you see me, while I was painting it? And that was the original title. And I had the eyes in the blanket was what I painted. And then as I drew her eyes, I thought, oh my goodness, I see you. And I wanted to create that question, like whether that people might question that. Where do you see who I actually am behind all of this?
Yeah.
And I think you can really interpret it a lot of different ways. I deliberately left the kind of sharper parts of the branches on, and I used those branches because I had smooth branches that I could have used. So I definitely chose to be just that bit more provocative, I think, with the visual overtones of that.
Because you've got another piece too that's very similar. It's just the eye, and you've got kind of the lid that's been shaped with a bunch of twigs across the top. How was that motivation to create that piece different from this one?
The eye was the first of any of the series that I did. It was my concept piece.
Okay.
And I had seen in my head a picture of an almond-shaped eye with branches, and I've even created eyelashes from the branches, from the twigs. So if you see the twigs at the corner of the eye, they flick up, and it's like eyelashes.
Yeah.
And I searched. It took me a long time to find the right twigs for that, to find the right shape, to find what I wanted to say with it. And I really got into the space of understanding that twigs can be arteries, that nature is actually intrinsically linked to who we are as people, and we are different people without it. And I wanted to kind of showcase that. That particular eye, I don't think has very much emotion in it. I deliberately painted it that way.
It seems more decorative.
It seems more decorative. It seems to be that you're more focused on the upper, heavier twigs in the lid and the whole concept of, oh my God, she's put twigs on a canvas, than anything else.
But I mean, it's also that kind of thing where, you said you searched so long to find the right twigs to go on that. It's that whole thing that you can't really bend nature to I will at the same time, can you? It's the whole process of just trying to make it perfect when in essence, nature isn't perfect. It's never going to be.
No, it's never going to be perfect, and neither are we. And I think sometimes, it was interesting on Wednesday night at the exhibition that there was 3 different people that came up and said that was their favourite piece, that one piece. And I wouldn't have thought that, because I thought it was more decorative. And I think some people, I love the way that art is so subjective in that way, because for me, I didn't really feel too much about it other than a sense of accomplishment for having done it and gotten it right for me. But other people saw amazing things in that. And they said things like, I felt that eye was really kind, and I felt that it was the eye of Mother Nature looking at me. Like, it was really quite interesting to see why they felt, and it was more of a comforting vibe. There was no confrontational or kind of edginess to that. Yeah.
I tell you what, I don't know if anyone's had a look at our Instagram page, but I've shared it on the Facebook page as well. But there's a series here, the first 3 that you had at the exhibition. So they're massive, big pieces, and they've got twigs across them, and in between them they've got patches of blue and gold and red. And I spoke to, what was the gentleman's name? I'm sorry, your student that was there?
Greg Fergus.
Greg, that's right. And he gave me a little bit of rundown on this piece from what you've said. But you know what he said is that the red in this was sort of like a really strong emotion, whether it be like an anger or something, and it's kind of breaking apart, breaking through. But the gold kind of was a sign of impermanence. It wasn't always going to be that way. Things change. And when I looked at the series and taking that into account, like I didn't form my own opinion before he told this to me, so it was good to kind of get, but for me to take it further, the series where you've got the first piece was very sparse, lots of blue, not a lot of red, and as it progresses, it gets angrier and angrier, if that makes sense. And I just thought that was very interesting, and I don't know what other people thought about this, but a lot of people have loved and commented this piece online. So it's been a big hit, on Instagram as well. So, can you tell me a little bit more about that one?
Connections, they're my latest pieces and I'm very proud of them. The Connections pieces are about the life cycle of us and the branches, and if you see my concept photos, I've put a video up of my exhibition, but also the workings behind it. So those pieces started as blank canvases with those twigs in those formations on them, and I photographed them with no colour whatsoever, with just the twigs on them. And then because I wanted to do something large and abstract with that, and that I changed drastically as I progressed through the piece. And I remember a word that I'd heard at Logan Art Gallery recently: resolved. I wanted to make this a progression that resolved itself. And the beginning of the first piece is when we're born, and the red and the gold represents significant relationships in our life. So it doesn't represent anger. Oh, yeah. It represents passion. Yep. Because red is my spirit soul colour. Red, magenta, those warm colours, they are what I vibrate with, and they are that and gold represents richness and beautiful passion in life. And in the first one, there are not many pieces, and they're unformed and they're small, because the major connections that we have in our life are our parents and maybe some of our extended family. The brushstrokes with the cream, and it is a slightly greeny, creamy colour mixed in with a Payne's grey blue, was painted with a brush. It was the only painting that was painted with a brush. And that's because our parents and those around us smooth our way. They're there to meet all of our needs, and there are some emerging more gold areas in that are kind of peekaboo, but it's smoother and creamier, although we may have some slight hiccups or turbulence in our lives. Yep. The next one is representative of when we're in school. So it has a progression again, but as I was painting it, I started to see cyclones. So I've painted it with a palette knife. Yeah. And I started to see cyclones because I understand that in the schoolyard, and I reflected on mine and my son's lives, that as you progress through high school, you make more significant connections and you love them passionately for a time, and then you hate them passionately for a time. Yeah. Yeah. And it can happen really, really quickly, and it becomes more complicated. Yep. Our lives become more complicated. And even in those areas of turbulence in the white and the blue, you have patches of gold. Yeah. Because there is still richness there. And then the final piece is what we are now, what we may have now. And it represents that journey overlaid one over the other. Yep. So you've got some brush strokes underneath, but palette knife on top. You've got more red things because you should have more significant, passionate, beautiful relationships in your life. You've got more connections as more twigs interlay, and those connections can be more twisted and varied. Yeah. And then you will have had sorrow, most likely grief, anxiety, depression, and that represents that blue, that darker blue. Yeah. So it's kind of that sorrow, not anger, but it could be that too. Yeah. Yeah. Those things in our life that we may regret, those things in our life that we may kind of wish I'd done that better.
Yeah.
I'd been a better person. But the gold zone's laid right in the middle of that because sometimes we are that better person.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, I really love that narrative.
yeah.
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 It really draws out really nicely. And that's kind of, even though, the emotions that even though the emotions that he was trying to tell me about, he kind of got the edge of what you were saying, I suppose. It still has that beautiful narrative of life, and it does come across. It's very beautiful. I think that's and the sight, and like being in front of an artwork, I just recommend to everyone, it doesn't matter who you are, where you're going, if you can get to art, whether it be at a gallery or wherever, go and immerse yourself in it and go open-minded, because if you don't, you're missing out on so much.
Yeah, a lot of people really just don't know how to take it in. Like, it's that when we went and did the first engagement piece with Naomi's work, people just, they don't know what they're supposed to do with it. They know it says something to them, but they don't think they're allowed to say it either. They think that it's just maybe just one of those private thoughts.
Well, why is that though?
Yeah.
Why have we as a society gotten to that point where we're too afraid to even have an opinion that we might think might be controversial and then speak it?
Yeah.
Or
like even to say you don't like something. So
even to say you don't like something. Yeah.
So I'd said to a fellow at work who doesn't really get art. He's a young guy. So, and that's the other thing. I think younger people, as just part of life, they're very being self-absorbed means that kind of sometimes you're not really asking the questions about stuff. You're just too in your own head.
True. I was like that at 19. No, seriously.
Yeah, I think everyone is. It's kind of one of the funny things about going out and asking young people questions. They've got very unanalyzed answers.
I would say immature to a degree.
Yeah.
Because they haven't had the wealth of experience to understand or think about things more deeply.
Yeah.
Unless they are artists themselves.
Yeah.
So my husband was an artist at 17, and he was different. Is probably why I married him. He was really different, and my one huge regret now that I am an artist is that he ditched art school to go and do nursing when he was one of the up and coming breakout artists of our generation at that time. And I truly believe that he would be an internationally acclaimed artist now because he had so much talent. Yeah. So I think yes and no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Different. Yeah. My group at school, we were
But
all...
my kids that don't engage with it, they're like,
Yep.
why are you making me go to your art exhibition?
I think that's just kids.
Yeah,
That's
I know,
just, they're raging against whatever the
We've
parents are
seen
doing.
them all before.
Yep.
But I guess when you're talking about narratives and things, when you come from a journaling perspective, journaling is about the whole narrative of that journey of creating something, page after page, I guess, and then kind of making that evolve, like, because you said that's where your art came from, your passion to create and keep creating fine art. That whole, I guess, further exploration of that concept. How would you describe how you got into journaling in the first place?
Wow. I have always been a creative person. So I have been like a haberdashery sewer, a quilter. I've been a scrapbooker, teacher, designer, that kind of thing. And having young kids, that was a creative outlet for me. And I spent a lot of hours doing it. And then about 4 years ago, I just got over it. Like I realised that my pages were no longer about the photos or either people that I was trying to preserve those memories of. I was taking photos to put into the art that I'd planned for the page, and I realised that in myself that I needed to have more freedom of expression, because there's a lot of rules in scrapbooking about archival rule practices, and what I wanted to do just didn't fit. So I then stumbled onto YouTube, like, the digital immigrant that I am, and just started looking. I just did journaling.
Yeah.
And I saw that, but there was suggestions come up on the side, and I saw some art journal pages, and I went, oh my God, this is what I'm looking for. And for the first 12 months, I just did some kind of mesh between the two. It was awful and amazing and horrible all at the same time. And I often show that first journal to people and they go,
That's kind of like my efforts at the moment. I've tinkered with a couple of pages here and there, but not done anything seriously. And I've just gone, maybe this isn't for me.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but I persisted and I taught myself a lot of technique, because I figured if you know more, you can do more. And no, I'm not doing an ad for Griffith University when I say that, but I think it's true. So then I also decided that I found these communities online of mixed media art journaling, and I'm involved in a lot of them. And I came to the attention of one of the biggest ones, and she asked me to be a senior admin on the site for the Facebook group. And then she asked me, with no YouTube channel of my own, to teach an art journaling course online. And she had no idea whether I could do it or not. And art journaling, the way that we kind of think about it now, kind of started around the 2008, 2009, and now it's bigger than scrapbooking internationally. Like, it's actually quite a big crafty / arty kind of thing.
I'm glad because, okay, scrapbooking's nice, but it is, I think I like the idea of art journaling more than just scrapbooking.
Oh, yeah.
It just seems
And
like
you can add
so
photos
much.
into art journaling if you want. Like,
Yeah, you can throw it all in there.
That's right. And scrapbooking, because a lot of people would not want to ruin their pages by writing on them because they didn't like their handwriting. They wouldn't put any memories of the experience of the photo, which is what I used to do, because I thought, this is a photo album. One day I'll have Alzheimer's and I'll need that. You need
the context in there.
Yeah, that's right. I need the context of it and the chronological flow and, all of that. And with art journaling, the way that I approached it was, I'm a terrible journaler. I love to write stories and I love to talk about my life, but I'm not very good at keeping it up as a habit. I never managed to make it a habit. The art journaling, because I was doing two different things, because I was learning how to paint and draw and stick and do all other stuff, and learning what worked and what didn't, which took a really long time. I also were listening to beautiful meows in the backyard.
Oh, sorry. I'm trying not to laugh, but I just can't help it.
No, I have kitty cats too. I know that it's one of the joys of life.
They definitely make life interesting.
I know, right? But with the art journaling, something different came out of mine. I got a YouTube channel. I started playing around with doing YouTube process videos of what I did. I started teaching online, and one of the things that came out as the constant feedback of my students was, we got so much out of your lesson on an emotional level. We have a disability, or I've had abuse in my life, or I cut myself, or I've had suicidal thoughts or depression and anxiety. And your exercise of reflection within that lesson and then creating something over the top of that, or blah, 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 really, I just had this sense of peace and healing over me as I did it. because you get the hormones released when you become creative, and it's whether you're doing music or writing or painting, are those that are you have go through your body just after sex, and that is incredibly addictive and very zen at the same time. So it's that whole, you haven't got the in it, but you've got that whole zen, I can't get enough of this. And this is why people get addicted to this whole art journaling thing, and that's what we see.
So from journaling, is that where we led to with becoming an art therapist? Because I know that you do a lot of stuff throughout the community, one being the Canefields Clubhouse, the other was there another place, and then I'm good with my memory, aren't I?
With Logan's Health and Wellbeing
That's it.
Centre in Beenleigh, yeah.
I knew it was something women,
yeah.
but the crank stuff as well.
Yeah,
I
and
did see.
that's through Logan Women's.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I had one of the members of that art journaling group that I became, one of those art journaling groups, was an art therapist, and she's based in Sydney. And she did art therapy, does art therapy at a drug and alcohol rehabilitation clinic. And I just went to her, wow, you know, and she said to me, a lot of your work is incredibly along those lines. Have you thought about doing that? So I looked up diplomas, and I could spend $26,000 doing a diploma or $1,000 doing a diploma. So I chose the $1,000 one.
Yep.
But that course was incredibly confronting to me to do, because I treated myself like I needed to get through it.
Yep.
And if you have a look at some of those journals exercises that I did, I was also interesting that I approached it from the artist perspective and not the psychology perspective, because, you know, 17 out of the 20 modules of that diploma are psychology.
Yeah.
So I approached it from an artist perspective and not from a psychologist perspective, and that's 99% of the people that do that diploma are psychologists wanting to add art therapy to their practice.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm an artist looking to become an art therapist. So it
Yeah.
was really quite different. And that particular college wants me to come and teach workshops with them, because it was a very different take that I had on that. But the Brave Girls workshops with Crank were born out of a desire for our girls to understand what bravery is. And one thing that's come in the narrative of popular culture and fashion today, and our, 5 seconds of fame sort of culture that we see, it affects our teens in such a way, and particularly our girls, that they don't understand that whatever they see online is not actually real. It's airbrushed. It's all of those things.
Yeah.
That those lives are not real. That then that doesn't then equal happiness.
Yeah.
And that being brave in a world like this to be yourself is actually a massive undertaking. When social inclusion, or, that whole I want to conform and belong, is something that our teens crave more than anything else. They crave it more than love. They crave it more than a stable family. They crave it more than being beautiful. They want to belong. And I don't think to a degree that changes all that much, but we push it down and push it down and push it down. As we get older, and we understand that it's actually possible to have that by being yourself.
Yeah.
But at that age, they don't.
Yeah.
And I talk to them about little acts of micro bravery and what bravery means in their world. And the last class that I had, that was probably the photos that you saw, there was 11 girls in that from 12 to 17, and there was 5 different cultural and religious backgrounds in that, and that was an incredibly interesting mix.
Yeah.
And I had girls in hijabs in that class, and I had Jewish girls in that class, and I had girls that were like hippies, and, it was really interesting, and some that was really self-aware and some that weren't. Yeah, it was really good, and the feedback from that was that they all learnt something really individual to themselves, and on the back of those canvases is their story and their struggle. So they have to they have to be honest. They don't have to share it. They have to be honest about a struggle they've had in their life. And I walked around and had a look at some of and some of it was very confronting. So that brave girl on that canvas that they take home, that is their visual reminder to be that brave girl.
Yeah. Yeah, such an important thing. And having two girls, it's been something that I've been very mindful of. Someone, Karen Tyrrell, actually, I don't know if you know her, she's a big advocate for, empowering young kids against bullying and that kind of stuff. A lot of her stories and young adult novels all sort of have that central theme around them. But she shared something the other day about girls and how that social inclusion thing and how it kind of becomes an unwritten understanding between their friendship groups. And it's the same it hasn't changed, this element of it. It's the same when I was a kid, is that to be someone's friend at some point in time, you have to accept that it has sort of restrictions on it or extra kind of, I don't know how to explain this. Like conditions on the friendship, if that makes sense. So, and these conditions change. So it means that when you get to a different social circle, you want to be those friends with those girls, but those conditions might mean that you have to act a certain way and be a certain person and all those sorts of things. And it changes between, from day to day. So you might come to school the next day and those same friends that you had those friendships with those conditions might turn around and say, well, those conditions aren't good enough today. And then you're not friends with that group. And, it's only compounded, I guess, to a certain degree with, Instagram and all the online stuff that our kids have to deal with these days that we didn't. And we could talk about that forever. But, it's the awareness of, young girls are very precious.
Yeah.
And that particularly when I look at my daughters and how different they are, I can see that art is a fantastic way to be expressive and sort of find their own voice. And that's what, it doesn't necessarily have to be visual art. It can be music, it can be drama, it can be anything.
That's right. And I fully agree with you. And I'd like to see Brave Girls workshops that didn't just focus, because that's what I do.
Yeah.
But as an art therapist, I'm very well aware that there are other media and
Yeah.
I wish to explore that as well.
And then it's such a pity that we don't see more art in schools and exploration as far as the major focus on a lot of the curriculum, that it's sort of kind of died back a little bit.
Yes.
Some schools are different. Some schools still do.
Well, it shouldn't just be STEM, it should be STEAM.
Yeah.
Because creativity leads to innovation, and if we're going to become an innovative nation, then we have to have creatives embedded in with those people in those disciplines in what I call transdisciplinary teams to create the innovation, because the creatives are going to think completely outside of the box and they're not going to be bound by the rules that the others have.
And it seems
in their
like
disciplines.
there should be some sort of crossover between sort of art therapy and the way our special ed departments help the way certain kids, deal with, their day-to-day lives. I know that my daughter struggles a little bit with some things and the cognitive planning that comes with writing and stuff like that. So she's much better explaining herself orally than she is doing written work.
Mm-hmm.
But to give her a different outlet to also be able to explain herself, like she's fantastic with the computers, but she loves the creative side of creating a PowerPoint presentation, something as simple as that. So journaling for her would probably be another way for her to be able to express herself in a situation where she might not feel very comfortable.
Yeah.
And I think there needs to be sort of more push towards that in certain situations at school.
Yeah. I completely agree.
That brings part 1 of our 2-part interview with Peter to a close. Part 2 of this interview will follow early next week. Thank you for being with us, and as a reminder, leave your comments about the episode on the blog, Twitter or Facebook. Share the podcast by sharing the Twitter or Facebook post for this episode, and if you like what we're doing and you want to get involved, hit us up on the contact page. See you next time.